Hi, I'm Rich Lieberman. This is the Rich Lieberman Bay Area Media Pulse. And look, I've been working on a lot of stories, as I often do. And sometimes information comes my way, and you have to talk about it. Of course, you do. But first, you have to do a lot of investigating and a lot of back and forth and all that. Now, look, I have made it clear over the years about what I view as a total ridiculous situation involving the Giants, San Francisco Giants, the baseball team. One of the most popular franchises now in the Bay Area. Well, you have the loss of the A's, the Raiders. Of course, the Warriors moved from the East Bay over to San Francisco. It's always been the Giants. They're the number one team, baseball. They always have been, even when the A's were here. And, of course, the 49ers who rule the land. But let's stick with baseball. And what I'm hearing now through the grapevine, and these are respected people, and have I had direct talks with them? No. But I hear and talk and am privy to information that doesn't necessarily they want to be out there. But inevitably, with the way the world works today and our communication situation, word gets out. Even when the word is not exactly something convenient for their PR purposes. Look, I've always complained is not the right word. I've always wondered aloud, how do the Giants feel about their brand, their product, their total franchise, its image, when they are running out third and fourth and D League broadcasters? Now, the Giants have a Hall of Fame representatives with John Miller when he wants to work, and Mike Krukow and Dwayne Kuiper, admittedly in the twilight of their career, but still very popular within the San Francisco Giants fan base, not just in the Bay Area, but beyond. There are a lot of people, a lot of fans who still love the Giants, who listen all over the world, literally, when they're able to. And then, of course, you have Dave Flemm, very capable, adequate, not one of my favorites, but he does a good job. Sort of the man that is also, believe it or not, at the forefront of some of the criticism taking place here. And there are octopusal, is that a word? I'll use it. Tentacles of disgust here. What am I talking about? All right, I'll be specific. And I'll try to tell you there are layers of angst here, disgust, resentment. And I say to myself, and I'm going to tell you folks what the situation is. And you could consider it for yourself. Use your own judgment. The Giants knew full well that John Miller, Hall of Fame broadcaster, radio, TV, used to work at ESPN, has been the Giants' voice for damn near 3 decades now. Miller's gotten older, doesn't want us to work as many games as he's worked in the past. Totally reasonable, totally understandable. Well, during the last road trip, and this has happened multiple years now, but very apt description right here. Miller chose to tell management, the bosses, Larry Baer, that he wasn't going to work the Giants' last road trip, taking place in Detroit and Washington, which is interesting since that's where he worked a prominent part of his broadcast career, in nearby Baltimore. But he didn't want to go to Washington, didn't want to go to Detroit. Why? Because he's tired, doesn't want to work as many games. Totally reasonable. Well, then why did Miller say, oh, I will work the Miami series. That was the end of the road trip. So Miller would say to management, I'm going to fly cross country, all the way to South Florida and Miami. And yeah, I'll work that. But I won't work Detroit. I won't work Washington. Not only that, fly at the end of the trip, only to fly 72 hours later right back to the West Coast. John, you said all along you're tired. You're not working 130, 140 games like you have in the past. You're working like about 110, maybe 120 tops. That was caught with a lot of resentment inside the Giants broadcast hierarchy, and it got to the top dude, not the owner, but close, Larry Baer. Another person, Dave Flemm. Flemm took a whole week off to cover golf. They knew about this. They knew. In fact, Flemm doesn't work many games in April. Why? Because he covers golf, namely for ESPN, the Masters, and various other things. They knew that, yet they gave the okay to Dave Flemm. Maybe belittled, maybe beleaguered, maybe now a resentment, but what took them so long? Let's go to the other people here. The proverbial gorillas in the room. Mike Krukow, Dwayne Kuiper, very popular, very funny, and maybe considered for Hall of Fame, but they haven't been able to crack that yet. But guess what? There are limitations right now, folks. You know it. You hear it. Not the fault of Krukow and Kuiper, but just plain factual. Krukow does not travel anymore. He remains in the Bay Area during baseball season because he has a health malady that does not allow him to go on trips. He stays and does home games. Okay, we all know that. Kuiper, very popular, very rarely goes on travel trips now. Went to Miami, curiously, but okay. But that situation has not benefited the Giants situation because they then have to go out and get backup broadcasters, not just radio, but television. But let's stick to radio because that's where the heart and soul of this major gripe that exists within the Giants ownership, all the way to Big Bird himself, Larry Baer, and beyond. Look who has the backup broadcast situation right now. I thought I was the only one who felt this way. Apparently, I'm not the only one. Apparently, there exists within the Giants hierarchy a great deal of angst and resentment and downright hostility because they understand that Joe Ritzo and FP Santangelo, who work for the team and are the sort of fill-ins when all the other A-listers can't broadcast because of whatever, are not sufficient, are not, shall we say, representative of a franchise, rightly so, that considers itself one of the most storied franchises, not just in Major League Baseball, but beyond. The San Francisco Giants, with roots in New York, moved to San Francisco back in 1958. Hall of Famers, legacy players like Willie Mays, Willie McCovey, and Jack Clark and Will Clark, and great personnel and great broadcasters like Lon Simmons and Hank Greenwald and Al Michaels, if you go all the way back. And now beginning in 1997 with the hiring of John Miller, and when Krukow and Kuiper began to catapult into the great Hall of Fame status worthy broadcasters that they are, have become an entirely popular part of the team beyond the players. Fleming, well, not my cup of tea, very average in my opinion, very, very well respected. But these guys have their own situations, have not been broadcasting the games. And here we are in early June. So we're only talking about 2 months, and already Miller has taken off 3 series, has not worked all the games. They've only played about 62 games? And Miller has taken almost half of the games off. They're not happy about it. They signed up for this, did they? Larry Baer, ownership, Mr. Johnson, your son, the people at Comcast, people at KNBR, Cumulus. But okay, we'll put up with it. But look who they have doing the broadcast. Joe Ritzo, a minor league broadcaster, very vanilla, and FP Santangelo, who was fired not that long ago by the baseball team, the Nationals in Washington, under very, very creepy and mysterious circumstances. If you want to look it up and look at the main reason and specific, Google FP Santangelo and Washington Nationals firing. You'll get the entire story and stories. I'm not responsible for that. The Giants knew what they were getting into when they hired this guy. But that's another story. These are not capable fill-ins. They're adequate. They're barely adequate. Let's look at other franchises. Do you think the Yankees, the New York Yankees, would have these D-listers as broadcasters, even at a fill-in basis? No, because they don't. Do you think the Mets, the New York Mets, the Dodgers, the Los Angeles Dodgers, the Chicago Cubs, I can go on and on, Philadelphia Phillies, even the frickin' Miami Marlins, Houston Astros, Texas Rangers, they all have capable plus backups. Look, the baseball season is 162 games. It's lengthy, it's long. And even with first-class travel and 5-star hotels, a lot of these broadcasters get that perk when they travel with the team. I'm not saying this situation is what it is right now. It's what is being discussed and what has been already talked about in various broadcasting circles here in the Bay Area. How can the Giants, again, one of the most storied franchises in all of sports, not just Major League Baseball, have FP Santangelo and Joe Rizzo? But that's a side thing. The Giants are not thrilled about the Miller situation, about the fact that Krukow and Kuiper, their setup makes these other broadcasting arrangements not very popular, very, very inconvenient. But my question is, then why do they sign up for this? Inevitably, folks, this is very, very unpopular to say this, but I'll say it. You sometimes have to maybe think beyond and make changes because, inevitably, Krukow, Kuiper, they're not going to be broadcasting for long. They signed up, and they have a 4-year extension, but big deal. You think they're actually going to make it beyond? And I'm not talking in any way, shape, or form in ill repute or disrespecting Krukow or Kuiper or Miller. They're all in their mid-70s, folks. We already know about the health limitations that afflict both Kuiper and, to a more of an extent, Kruko. And then Fleming. He has his sights on a national gig. And God bless him, apparently beloved by ESPN and other major broadcast outlets. Well, Fleming's got a contract with the Giants, but that's limited. We know that he loves to broadcast golf. We know that he is very, very popular with the NC2A, the college basketball and tournament and all that. Well, that would conflict with his baseball responsibilities. But moving on beyond that, the main deal is here, folks. How do the Giants put these minor leaguers, these backups like Ritzo, like F.P. Santangelo as their fill-ins? It's not very becoming. It's not indicative of a franchise that says how special it is. And it is. You don't have the same situation taking place in other organizations around the country. Frankly, I am surprised that this has not made its way onto the mainstream local press, like the Chronicle. Well, we know the Chronicle and the way they go about reporting things, even sports stuff. You're only going to hear this, by the way, here, because it would be inconvenient and it would not be so sweet of the other so-called SF mainstream pressers to talk about this. The broadcasters themselves, well, they can poo-poo it and say that it's all indicative and coming from that blogger, but they know, and now I know, of course, I've always known the situation that they are amongst. Although in this instance and beyond, the backups simply do not, again, befit that of an organization that prides itself on the past and championships and baseball lore and the ballpark, going back from New York to Candlestick to the last 25 years, the great ballpark that they love so much and absolutely publicize so much, and it has been met with swift approval by their fan base. And folks, you know this, the fan base don't like these guys, these backups. F.P. Santangelo, my God, he couldn't get a gig with the Toledo Mudheads. And Joe Ritzo, about as vanilla and uninspiring as it gets, folks, that's just simply, the Giants can be pissed off. They could be angry. They could be fed up that they signed up for this, but it's them who wanted it. You got to spend money like anything else. Yes, even on backups, you get people that are not only qualified, but at least have a degree of passion. And not necessarily popularity, but better than Ritzo. Might be a nice guy. Probably is. Is he adequate? Yes, that's about it. Santangelo, a total absolute failure. A total nincompoop. I'm being diplomatic. The Giants have to make a decision long term. Because if this situation is making its way now into their arena and others, this is this is year one of their 4-year extension. They might want to have thought about this before they signed up for this crap.